Xin chào các quý vị và các bạn. Rất là vui ở đây. Cố lên, cố lên.
Hello? Okay. Thank you, Oliver. This is an entrance. I can't beat that. So, thank you for sitting here. Actually, on last year's summit, I had the pleasure to have Oliver already with me, and it was the best-rated session of last year's Scaling Business Conference. So thank you for joining us. This is really meaningful. Oliver, welcome.
Cảm ơn Lars rất nhiều. Và tôi rất là vui hôm nay tôi có thể trình bày ở đây. Cảm ơn bạn nhiều.
Yeah, but
Sorry, for those who don't speak English, Lars, thank you very much. I'm very happy that I'm here. And so for those who don't speak Vietnamese, sorry.
yeah, and I'm finally learning Vietnamese, so hopefully next year we can do that in Vietnamese.
Tuyệt vời.
Oliver, so the session is called Breaking Barriers and Avoiding Traps, and you're the architect of access. So you were pivotal in the negotiations for the free trade agreements between Vietnam and the European Union.
Yes, correct.
The
EVFTA.
EVFTA. So I don't want that session is going to be too boring. So I want to dig more into how was it. So when we were sitting in these negotiations, what was let's say what was the single toughest deadlock you experienced there, where the opinions clashed and you had to resolve that?
I mean, Vietnam is an agriculture country. 70% are living basically nông thôn in the countryside. So for the Vietnamese government, it is absolutely critical to get market access to the European Union for its agriculture products. But the European Union is not easy about this, because agriculture is the #1 protected area of sector in the European Union. So when I attended in Geneva in the negotiation, and then later also in Brussels, that was the super key issue, to help the Vietnamese to get market access with their products to Europe. Do you know how many percent of coffee is basically consumed in Germany alone from Vietnam? 60% of all coffee. 60% of all coffee. So that's the key. And agriculture, we had to really fight for this, for the Vietnamese government to get market access.
So was that difficult, or what was the mood there? Was it tough, or?
Of course, I mean, it was at the brink of giving up, basically, for the Vietnamese sometimes. One of my personal friends is Mr. Jankowfsky, former MIT minister. You know him. So I worked with him 30 years, and he was close to giving up, walking out. He just said, I can't bear it anymore. The protection mindset of the EU. Sorry, this is all not public, what I tell you. It's for Lars that I do it, so don't spread it around outside, okay?
Well, let's not spill some secrets. I think we record this session here. Thank you. I think this is really, for me, this is quite meaningful to get a chance to talk to someone who was part of that. And I remember, I'm here 12 or 13 years. I remember when the prices dropped for wine, because that was the other side, right?
Exactly. That's the reciprocal side, of course. Yes. The Vietnamese, now one very important point. The Vietnamese have one of the most liberalized market access service sector under WTO and the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. They're not stingy. Họ không kỳ bỏ đâu. You know, they're not stingy. They are friendly, and they want foreigners come to Vietnam, enjoy Vietnam, and they open the market. But there is a limit. I give you, you give me.
Yeah. Okay, so now fast forward 2026. I know now that you were also pivotal to the upgrade of Vietnam's status into emerging market, which is a lot of people might not know, but there is a huge change to Vietnam coming this year, and you were once again one of the masterminds behind that change. So can you take us behind the scenes of the decision, or maybe give a short explanation why it's also so important that Vietnam is getting upgraded this year?
Thank you, Lars. We have to be very precise here. The rating agencies like FTSE Russell, who I cooperate with, don't care about Vietnam's GDP growth. They care about market mechanics. So the single biggest blocker was the so-called pre-funding requirement. Historically, if a foreign investor wanted to buy 10 million in shares, they had to have 10 million sitting in a Vietnamese bank account before they could even place the order. No institutional investor wants to do that. They don't want to work on that. It's dead capital. Dead capital. So my advice to the Ministry of Finance was clear. We had to remove this bottleneck without compromising settlement safety. So we solved this with recent legal instruments allowing non-pre-funding for institutional investors. We moved from a system of cash first to a system of guarantee and settlement. That was the technical friction point. We fixed the plumbing, so the capital can flow now.
But why was the government so afraid of letting go of that pre-funding?
2008. Wiring back to 2008, the reason. In 2008, the worldwide financial crisis hit Vietnam. More than 5,000 Taiwanese, Korean, and other foreign investors said, okay, we have our investments here, we have our companies here. It was Friday evening, and they all left. And they undermined, that's the key, the financial situation of all the institutions here in Vietnam. They undermined it. And that's a fear. That's a deep fear of the Vietnamese government that this will happen again, because in 2008, 2 million workers demonstrated on the street. And the Politburo, no, not official, okay? This is just for me. The Politburo was really concerned about that. They will never forget that anymore. So they introduced this pre-funding requirement over the last 10, 15 years. But the problem is, I told them, hey, it's a judgment call. If you really want to attract foreign investors, you have to make commitments that are international standards. And finally, they listened, because I told them, you know, if you do that, you get to be emerging market. One more thing, you don't have the numbers. 2 months after publishing by FTSE Russell that emerging market would be granted in September to Vietnam, I had 48 e-meetings with 48 pension funds of the United States of America. And they said, when Vietnam exceeds emerging market, we have to allocate, we are bound, they're bound. This is not a question whether they want or not. They have to allocate capital to Vietnam. Now, second number, do you know how much all the pension funds in the US, how much money they manage? Guess. 30 trillion. We talk trillion, not billion. So that's the reason. And if Vietnam is an emerging market, it's loose. They can invest here. So calculating within the next we have 2026 now, next 3-4 years, minimum 25 billion, if not 50 billion, just from that.
So this will be a massive capital intake into the Vietnamese economy.
Yes, absolutely.
So and now I'm here since 12 years, and what I've seen how the country changed in 12 years without that, I'm really curious how the next couple of years are looking like.
And now you imagine, I arrived in Vietnam on 6th of June 1991. I'm here since 35 years. This is my life. But that's another story.
Maybe we have time for that
Exactly.
later. So, okay, this is a not prepared question, but we're here on the Scaling Business Conference. And like a couple of weeks ago, I asked you, and I said, like, Oliver, what does it mean when that capital comes to Vietnam for my business? How should I get ready? And you give me a specific advice. Do you remember what you told me? It's not written here. So you told me that we should look at the banks for Vietnam because there is a large need going to upgrade the infrastructure to be able to handle that massive capital intake.
Yeah, I mean, the Vietnamese government is very well aware that they need to fix the bottleneck, and the bottleneck is the infrastructure. Okay, so, but historically, they were always well aware of that, and that's the reason why I work a lot with the World Bank. The World Bank calls them the poster child of development because Vietnam never agreed to put up a knot of international debt, so they're super conservative. Number two, they invested in the last 20 years, each year, listen again, in the last 20 years, each year, 40% of their GDP in upgrading the infrastructure in Vietnam. And that is the absolute key, but they have to put it up now. And one super key is to upgrade now the transmission grid for electricity. Without that, the light goes off.
Yeah, thank you. So you said 1991. I thought the country opened 1995. How did you pull that off?
No, it's exactly at the end. I was in the party with the US aid under the Clinton administration in end of 1993. So the first step to open was the basically lifting of the trade embargo, 1993, 1994. That was the very first step. And there, I was at the party in Sofitel Legend in Hanoi. It was wonderful. It was the beginning of a new era.
And we talked the last time about it, but I think it's quite impressive. You are also the first and maybe only foreigner who ever presented at the National Assembly in Vietnam in Vietnamese. Is that correct?
That is correct. I got invited by the former chairwoman, Kim Ngan, to the National Assembly of Vietnam. And she called me and said, Ollie, we are about to sign the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. 70% of our people in the National Assembly are farmers. Farmers. So you have to explain to them in a very clear and simple way, what is that what we will sign? And I said, and you have to do that in Vietnamese. And I said to Kim Ngan, in front of 500? In front of what? And she said, yes, but you know, the Northern Vietnamese are very critical about pronunciation, Ding Bak. So I was afraid. I thought, so maybe I cannot pronounce right. 30 minutes in front of the National Assembly. What is going on? And Kim Ngan said, I'm sure you can. I know you for 10 years. You can do it. So I tried it, and I made it, and I got the standing ovation. And I brought Vietnam then and the National Assembly into understanding the TPP commitments.
So, and how did it go? I mean, so you stand there, you start talking in Vietnamese. What was the reaction of the people?
Oh, very super question. So the first 5 minutes, they let me talk. And after 5 minutes, one Northern Vietnamese member of the parliament stood up and said, Oliver, Phật âm cả tư này sai, Phật âm cả tư này sai. And I was shocked. I mean, it's not my mother tongue. Tiếng Việt là không phải tiếng mẹ đẻ của tôi. Tôi có thể làm sai một tí. And Kim Ngan, the chairwoman, stood up and said to the guy, she addressed the guy, she said, mày im mồm đi. Mày im mồm nặng, mày không thể nói được một từ tiếng Anh. Tại sao mà nói như thế?
And what does it mean? Can you translate for us?
Okay. Kim Ngan, the chairwoman, said to the guy who criticized because I pronounced one word wrongly. She said, you stop talking, shut up. You cannot even talk a straight sentence in English. That was it. But after that, 30 minutes, for 25 minutes, it went well, it went perfect. and they all understood. Tất cả mọi người hiểu rất là rõ tôi trình bày cái gì. And then everything was fine, and they gave me standing ovation. And this is history. This is even they put it into internet.
Yeah, I think I watched it on YouTube. It's super old and I don't understand the word, but it was impressive to see you stand there. Thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
So, now talking about scaling, my favorite buzzword. You told me that with the changes now coming in the capital market and the changes in the law, that there are a huge amount of traps for foreigners who run companies here in Vietnam. So this is less about scaling, more about survival. So what is going to happen? And we have founders and entrepreneurs here who run businesses in Vietnam. So what do they need to take care of so that they are not in danger?
I keep it rất là đơn giản in Vietnamese, very simple in English. One thing, if you want, is key in Vietnam. You might have to have difficulties to hold people responsible for what they're advising you. The system in Vietnam is not sophisticated much. So the key issue when to come new to Vietnam, and you have to find consultants and also lawyers, make sure you can really hold them responsible for what they're advising you. And how does it work? Only way is international professional liability insurance. The only way. When you get to the Vietnamese law firm, and you ask them, you have professional liability insurance, they send you back a red paper from Bao Viet, which is kept at 50,000. They're just doing a $10 million deal. You know exactly that's dead. That's dead end. That's dead end. So please be very careful with that and make sure your advisors have an international standard professional liability insurance. It's very simple. Zet er dan zijn. Come on about.
But there are also changes upcoming for the nominee holders, right? So a lot of people who come to Vietnam use a local as a nominee to run their company, and that is going to change, correct?
That absolutely is the history. History was about 40 to 50% of all the establishments here were nominee structures. Of course, we were also always advising against that, but foreigners and Vietnamese, they did it. Now, it is in the law, and the government will punish that, and the government will basically take all assets and make this structure invalid. Invalid. That's the key. So, don't do that anymore. It doesn't pay off.
Well, lucky that we don't do that. I hope you don't do too. And yes, I know there are a lot of shady agencies out there who offer people to come to Vietnam, open a company, they get a visa, because visas are not so easy in this country for foreigners. And I think the golden times of these services are over, and a lot of people will wake up one day to a very bad surprise.
What they don't tell you is that you can have legal structures right from the beginning, which are enforceable, but they don't tell you. And that's the key. So you have to get to international standard advisors. They will tell you that. They will give you the options. They will not push you in one nominee structure. They will not do that anymore.
Well, you can have it, but not for $500 or $1,000. That's the key.
Okay, for $100, no problem.
So 1991, my God, I can't even imagine. As I said, I was 12 years ago here. The country was very different. I spoke to some attendees of the summit who were here 5-6 years ago, the first time. And then they said, like, hey, this tall building, the landmark and everything, that wasn't there the last time I was here. And I said, yes, correct, that's fairly new. And I said, like, and all these buildings, they were also not here. I said, yes, correct. So what I've seen with my own eyes the development of the country, the economy, the digital infrastructure, and even, so you know, we had last night our rock night, the 6th time, and we always support young Vietnamese artists. And I was stunned. The quality of the bands also evolved dramatically. What we had 5 years ago could not be compared to what we had last night. So I can't even imagine how was it 1991.
1991, you could count the Vietnamese who spoke English and came from the famous Amsterdam school. Maybe có thể bạn biết cả trường Amsterdam rất là nổi tiếng. So this famous Amsterdam school, 10 Vietnamese who could speak in whole Hanoi fluent English. The time was not about English. The time was about Russian, and everybody was learning Russian. But that changed then, and then everybody was turning around to English. So in that time in 1991, and through the whole 90s, from 1991 until 1999, when I worked with the Vietnamese, it was even much better even. When I had my bachelor in 1996, the boss of Siemens came to me and said, "We are lost in translation. We are lost in translation, Mr. Massmann." I said, "Mr. von Pira, I'm at your service." And I did the first gas-fired financed power plant in Vietnam, Phu My 3, which now is still a lighthouse project, because I spoke with EVN and I only negotiated in Vietnamese language. So that's key. The language is a door opener.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Tomorrow I have a talk about AI. And when I did the last year's summit, I was predicting that language schools are going to be dead because AI translation is here and it's getting better and better and better. But what I'm going to tell you tomorrow is I was wrong, because language schools actually thrive because human beings thrive on connection, and Duolingo and other tools skyrocket because people want to learn it. And yes, there are earbuds which translate, and my phone translates, so. It's going to be good in a couple of years, but people still want to connect and talk. So language is important.
Yesterday, one of the richest Vietnamese, also under the first 10, sat in my penthouse in Him Lam Riverside. And he told me, "Oh, I met some foreigners, they had these earbuds." You know, he said, "Chán đéo chịu được, bọn này không thực thể. They are not real." You know, it's not what I accept. It's ridiculous, he said. So that's the Vietnamese still also want to hear from you. Talking in Vietnamese, not only, friend, but not only, they want to know that you know how they are ticking, and that's the key. And you don't get that with earbuds, no.
Absolutely, that's why I don't speak Vietnamese yet, but I can sing in Vietnamese because I understood that the karaoke is the soul of this country, and that went the extra mile when I go with business partners and I can sing in Vietnamese.
Yeah. One other point is, when I was invited in the 90s, the Vietnamese government was very concerned about me. Foreigner come to Vietnam, and you never know what a foreigner will do. So the Secret Service invited me annually and said, anh viết thế này rất sâu, anh nói rất sâu về Việt Nam. Anh nói rất sâu. Mình không chấp nhận được. So you talk bad, you write bad about Vietnam, you criticize Vietnam. I said, you know what? In Vietnamese, tôi phải viết như thế vì tôi muốn giúp cho nước Việt Nam phát triển kinh tế. Đây là mục đích tôi thôi. So I do that because I want to help the Vietnamese to develop. They finally, took them some years, understand it. They don't invite me anymore. They let me do what I want.
Lucky you. Could have gone wrong. Okay. On that topic, I just want to share a short story. So when I came here 12 years ago, English wasn't really, not many people were speaking English. And my wife and I, when we were going shopping in a local area, then typically, my wife is from Thailand. She doesn't speak Vietnamese, so they like blah, 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 blah in Vietnamese. She's like, I'm sorry. Then they were like, wait. And then like a little 5-year-old or 6-year-old daughter comes from the back of the shop and spoke English. And I said to my wife, look at that. This is the future of that country.
Excellent example. Just imagine in the 90s, I started to work as a lawyer here. I got my license in 1998 from the Minister of Justice in Hanoi. So I had my team of 20 lawyers, Vietnamese lawyers, and you know, the English was awful. It was not good at all. So every paper, everything in writing, I took myself ages to correct it. I could write it myself faster. But then the Vietnamese came to me, and I said to them also, trời ơi, bạn ơi, tôi cũng can Anh. Tôi có thể tự làm được hết. You do, I don't need you. Your English is bad. And the guy stood in front of me, and he started to cry, and he said, cho tôi có một cơ hội để phát triển. Give me a chance to develop. That was 1998. Give me a chance, please. This guy is still with me in my office today. What do I want to tell you? If the Vietnamese know you're friendly, if the Vietnamese know they respect you, they stick to you like glue.
Yeah, absolutely. And on a funny side story, so the team who runs this summit, I think there are around 18 people. They're all Gen Z. 15 of them are female, 3 are male. And I was last week sitting with one of them, and she asked me, hey, how long are you in Vietnam? I said 12 years. And she said, shit, I was 10 years old when you came. I was like, wow. And that's exactly that little girl back then who now does this. And that I find unbelievably impressive.
The average age of the Vietnamese now is 32.8 years old. So when I arrived 1991 in Vietnam, 50% of all the Vietnamese people were not born yet. This is very important because the young generation is forming the society and developing the society and taking the society, moving the society forward. That's the key. This is the young generation. And the young generation is so critical. And that's one very big advantage for Vietnam's development.
Absolutely. So back to business, because we have some entrepreneurs sitting here. So if you could give us one advice or one specific sector where you would say like this is, which is currently you believe is undervalued, and where I should place my chips in the next 5 years, which sector is that?
There's one sector here, and I would bet specifically on green finance and renewable energy, năng lượng tái tạo, implementation. This is the key factor in Vietnam. Why? Vietnam has made the commitment to net zero by 2050. And we just passed a series of laws and decrees on renewable energy, especially direct power purchase agreements. That's your sector, DPPA. This is the real new gold rush. One more thing. I noticed that Vietnam has gone through congestion in the grids ever since the renewable energy sector boomed in Vietnam. So, listen to my advice. I wouldn't just build a wind farm or a solar farm. I would build that too, but not only. I would build the technology that manages the grid stability, which is key. The grid stability. The Vietnamese government, just to upgrade the grid, will need 140 billion until 2030. We talk 3 to 4 years. They don't have it. You can support them there. So I would build the technologies that manage the grid stability for renewables, and the financial platform that connects green bonds to these projects. They just start to trade green bonds now, this year. The exchange is coming up on CO2. It's brand new, it's since January. So the regulatory framework for green energy is now the most dynamic area of Vietnamese law. If you have the technology to make Vietnam cleaner, the government and the law is finally on your side. So come on back.
Okay, so we're currently partnering with the SAP Sustainability, and we have also some speakers from them. So we are partly there, but what I hear is we need also go into grid stability.
Absolutely. Grid stability is the key. The electricity generation is not the key anymore. Just one point, it's breathtaking. 2017, no solar power plant at all. Lars, guess how much megawatt we have now, commercial operation, solar power in Vietnam? Guess.
I think gigawatt, not megawatt.
18 gigawatt.
Yeah.
18 gigawatt. That's like 3 nuclear plants. So we have that. And this took 7-8 years only. That's it. The Vietnamese say, "Lac a ding." It's just an ale. It was easy. Lac a ding. You know? And they developed it. And they made it happen. So if they want to move, they get to move. And they will move. And that's Vietnam.
Thank you. So my CSO sitting there, you take notes.
You send me emails, you send me emails, I answer question. Mien Phi, Vietnamese Mien Phi, Kum Ko Zi, and I'm very happy that I can answer you all questions you have. Thank you very much.
So talking about questions, while we're talking here, does anyone have, I mean, this is a unique chance. Does anyone, if you have a question to Oliver here? I can go on and we can talk a little bit more deeper, but I'm pretty sure you are wondering. I mean, let me say something like this. When I came here, a share from my life, when I came here and I start talking to people who are here already longer, the very first question you always get is, how long are you here? And I can tell you that anything under 5 years, everybody just ignored me. Because the people here learn, you don't know if this person is going to be relevant. You don't know if this person is going to stay. You don't know if this person will be around in a couple of years. And after 5 years, suddenly the stance of the local expat community towards me changed dramatically. And I also learned, anybody who tells me, I'm here 20 plus years, is a person of influence and success, because you cannot be in this country for 20 years and doing proper business in the business without being substantially successful. Because just by the growth, Vietnam growth since then, if you just grow with Vietnam, you become incredibly wealthy.
One number, 2006. 60% in 2006, 60% of the Vietnamese were in poverty and living under $1 per day. We talk about 20 years. Now, the ratio is the other way around. 90% are middle class, and only 10% have that problem anymore. So it's basically a total turnaround. And why? The Vietnamese government learned, if the government, sign free trade agreements with other countries, I make myself rich. And that's what they learned, and that's what they're doing. They have 18 signed free trade agreements. Vietnam is one of the most internationally integrated country on earth, and with the most liberalized market access service sectors. I am a foreign lawyer. Tôi là luật sư nước ngoài. I'm a foreign lawyer. And I have a license. Giấy phép hành nghề của Bộ Tư pháp của Hanoi. I have a license from the Ministry of Justice in Hanoi. Now you try that in Thailand as a foreigner. No way. Indonesia, no way. Philippines, no way. So this market access. I sit in front of you, I can advise you, and the Vietnamese know exactly. They're super pragmatic. The Vietnamese are very super pragmatic. They know. I can help you. I can help you. So if you can help me, I'll take you.
So now you're here 30 years.
35.
35. I just spoke about 20 plus years. That's quite impressive. So 35 years. So if you, I know there are some people, some of you I know, some of you I just met, who think about building a business and coming here and trying to get the foot on the ground. I know your number one tip is learn the language. So let's keep that out. What is your number two tip or your top three things you want to tell people when you come here and you come here to stay and to build a business? What is it what you should do?
You should learn the 26 stratagems. There's a book, and you get it on Amazon. 26 stratagems. The Vietnamese say, 36 stratagems, the Vietnamese say, 36 mưu kể. 36 mưu kể. This is the core of the Vietnamese culture. It's apart from China, yes, don't get me wrong, but this is 36 mưu kể. It's 36 strategies. You can get it on Google. 36 stratagems, Google it. You can learn it. It takes you 1 hour or 2 hours. Then if you learn it and try to really understand it, you're in. 2 hours, do it.
You told me that already years ago.
I know, I told you years ago.
I didn't read it.
So you see?
But I need to.
But it helps you. You know, the reason why I'm in Vietnam is my father adopted a Vietnamese. His name is Qua. So 1991, I came here. I asked the question Lars asked now. I asked him in 1991. I said, Qua, I don't speak Vietnamese. How can I start to understand the Vietnamese culture deeply? So how can I get a shortcut? How can I get a shortcut? And he said, oh, I present you the book. And he presented me the book from Professor Harro von Senger in German, Harro von Senger. And this is 36 stratagems. He said, read that book, then you're in. And I did it. It took me just a week. I read it. And I, since then, followed that by the point, everything. And I became successful. If I'm negotiating with the Vietnamese, I represented some of the richest Vietnamese. They love to have me now because I negotiate with them, explain them in Vietnamese, and with the American investors, I'm on their side. And I know the 36 stratagems. So you get it, you learn it, you're in.
Thank you. So, no more questions? All right, I think then we can call it a day. Thank you, Oliver, for being here. Really appreciate it. It's very meaningful. I hope you'll stay a little bit around so the people can maybe ask you in private the question they have, which they don't dare to ask in front of everybody. Thank you.
Bạn hỏi tôi trực tiếp, không có vấn đề gì cả, tôi trả lời. Tôi cảm ơn bạn, quý vị rất nhiều.
Thank you so much for that
Thank you, Lars.
incredible conversation.